taking the doors off, you leave the hinges on the cabinets that are attached to the wall. But make sure you number the doors. So whatever spot you pick in your kitchen to start at doesn't matter, but just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then number them inside. You won't see this. This is where they attach to the hinge. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. As you're taking everything apart, it's a good idea to label your bags and put all your screws for your hinges, your handles in separate bags. So when you go to put it back together, you have them all in one spot. We are starting the sanding process. So we have all the doors off, and now we sand and sand some more. For the look we're trying to achieve, we want the edges to be a little bit more defined. On the edges, we go a little bit more. Just sanding enough to take the top coat off of the cabinets. We're to first coat of painting. The first coat is more of a dry brush, so you don't want a ton of paint on your brush. Just enough to cover without having drips everywhere. All right, so these have dried overnight where we did the first coat on the back. You can see I got my number in there so I know where it came from. The first coat, again, you can see it's more of a dry brush, so you don't want a whole lot of paint on it. So it'll dry like this, which is what you want. After we paint the first coat on this side, then that's when we'll do our first light sand. So right now we'll be working on doing all the front sides of the doors. All right, we are done painting the first coat of paint on both sides of the doors, facings, whatever we're painting. So before we do the second coat, we want to lightly sand just to get any drips or bumps or imperfections sanded down before we put the second coat on, because the second coat will also be a light coat. So I have another day of sanding ahead of me. Shouldn't be as hard as the first time because it's a light sand. Here we go. These sanding blocks are really good for taking some of the pressure off your hand. Although this time we're sanding light, so we don't want to put a lot of pressure until we get to the edges, and we can go a little bit more. So as far as which grit to use, we started with a 150 to sand the original finish off. You want something a little grittier, but not too gritty that it's going to make too many grooves in your wood cabinet. So 150 seemed to do a good job. Now that I'm on the sand between the paint coats, the first one I'm going to do this fine, the number 220, and the next time I sand after we finish most likely will be a super fine, and I don't know where the super fine is. It's going to be a higher number than 220. These are the spots that gets kind of fun, and you can do it however you want. You can kind of tailor it to the look that you want. So I'm going for kind of getting these details. You know, I feel like sometimes when the cabinets are all one color and they're perfect, they can be beautiful, but you kind of miss some of this amazing, you know, detail work that the cabinets have and the arches. So doing this technique can kind of bring those features of your cabinets out. So I'm focusing some of my sanding on those edges. So I have the sandpaper in my hand to kind of do these edges, maybe where the sanding block can't quite get. You can sand as much or as little as you want, depending on how drastic of a worn out kind of look that you want. That's the beauty of doing this yourself. It can be a lot of work, but you can make it exactly how you want. So here's what my door looks like after I completely finished the first sand. And we'll kind of tailor it as we go, but I think that looks kind of good. All right, we are at the final sanding stage. So I'm just burning through these edges. And Mom's doing the clear coat way over there. This sanding block that I've been using really helps, especially when you're burning the edges like this. It keeps your sandpaper right on the edge versus when you use sandpaper right in your hand, you can spill over into the rest of the finish where you might not want to sand. So invest in one of these. It's been very helpful. And when you're done sanding the last door, you can dance a jig and have a party. Or you can rest because you're sick of sanding and you're old and it hurts your arm and your hand.